just drying. I'll meet you there for our conversation. I hope I didn't ruin your whole vacation. You never know how far from home you're feeling until you watch the shadows cross the ceiling. Well, I don't know, but I can see it snowing. In your car, the windows are wide open. Come on home. Come on home. No, you don't have to be alone. Just come on home. Valentines break hearts and minds at random. That old Easter egg ain't got a leg to stand on. Well, I can see that you can't win for trying. And New Year's Eve is bound to leave you crying. Just come on home. Come on home. No, you don't have to be alone. Just come on home. Stars hang out in bars just talking. I still love the picture of us walking, just like that old house we thought was haunted. Summer's end came faster than we wanted. Just come on home. Come on home. No, you don't have alone. Just come on home.
Thanks, Todd. That was really great. And poignant choice there with John Prine, about a year on from losing him to COVID. So
Totally. Yeah.
I want to make sure that we give as many folks as we can an opportunity to hear your second piece here. So we're sort of right at 7 o'clock now. I suspect that we'll get some more attendees coming in here. So maybe I'll just give a brief intro and then I'll turn it over to you, and then would love to hear the second piece that you have. As folks are coming in here, let me begin by welcoming people to the meeting of Ward 5 NPA here. My name is Ben Travers. I'll be moderating the meeting tonight. I'm on the steering committee. We have a couple other steering committee members here with us in Scott Pavick, Lucia Campriello, Joe Derry. Other steering committee members are Shearston Bohm, Billy Clark, Andy Simon, Nate Lantieri, and Jillian Kirby. And I anticipate we'll be seeing many of them this evening momentarily. We just heard Todd Cooley. Todd, I'll turn it over to you now. If you could just mention a little bit about that piece you just played, if folks missed it. I know that we'll have the video of this if they want to go back and take a look at it, but if you could just introduce yourself and say a little bit about yourself, and then we'd love to hear your second piece before getting the agenda going here.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. So hi, everyone. My name is Todd Cooley. Use he, him pronouns. Recent kind of, I don't know if transplant's the right word. I recently moved to Burlington. I'm going to graduate school at UVM. And so when I saw the opportunity to kind of play some music for y'all, I was like, let me do this. It seems like a cool way to kind of get introduced to some of the folks in the community. Just recently, just got done playing a song called Summer's End by John Prine, which is It's been one of my favorites that I've listened to kind of throughout this year. I've also got one by a band called First Aid Kit called Emmylou. It's one of my favorite songs to play. And so, yeah, going to dive into that whenever is best. Does that cover everything? I feel like I'm sort of new to this, so I don't know like what I'm supposed to be saying.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And we'll double back to you after this piece, because if you wanted to, let people know how they might be able to get in touch with you or whatever, we can do that before you head off. But as people come into the meeting here, we'd love to hear the piece, and then we'll double back with you when you're done.
Totally. All right, let's do it. So this is called Emmylou by First Aid Kit. Oh, the bitter winds are coming in, and I'm already missing the summer. Stockholm's cold, but I've been told I was born under this kind of weather. When it's you I find like a ghost in my mind. I am defeated and I gladly wear the crown. I'll be your Emmylou and I'll be your Judith. You be my Graham and my Johnny too. You know I'm not asking much of you. Just sing, little darling, sing with me. Oh, so much I know. Things just don't grow if you don't lessen your patience. And I've been there before. I've held up the door for every stranger. But I'm not holding back. That's the strength that I lack. Every morning keeps turning out my own. And it brings me to you, but I won't just pass through. But not asking for a storm. I'll be your Emmylou and I'll be your Judith. You be my Graham and my Johnny too. You know I'm not asking much of you. Just sing, little darling, sing with me. And yes, I might have lied to. Benefit from knowing the truth. I was frightened, but I held fast. I need you now at long last. I'll be your Emmylou. I'll be your Judith. You'll be my Graham and my Johnny too. You know I'm not asking much of you. Just say, little darling, sing with me. I'll be your Emmylou and I'll be your Judith. You'll be my Graham and my Johnny too. You know I'm not asking. Just sing, little darling, sing with me. Just sing, little darling, sing with me. Thank y'all so much.
That was great, Todd. One of the silver linings of this pandemic is and moving to virtual meetings is we never used to do music. And we've started doing that in these virtual meetings, and really appreciate your reaching out and volunteering to do it. If anyone here knows anyone who would like to play for the community like this, we'd love to hear from you and have you as a part of the agenda. Todd, I don't know if folks wanted to reach out and get in touch with you. I don't know if you feel comfortable giving your contact information or anything like that, but
yeah, totally.
It was really great having you.
Yeah, of course. Again, my name is Todd Cooley, he, him pronouns. You could reach me at todd.cooley@uvm.edu. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram handle is Cod Tooley. So like the first letters of my first and last name are reversed. So yeah, totally. It's good to be with y'all tonight.
Yeah. Awesome. And the sound came through great. We really appreciated having you. And we also love that it's brought new people to these NPA meetings. Again, to welcome everyone tonight, my name is Ben Travers on the NPA steering committee. And, you know, for those people who are new to NPA meetings, next year, 2022, will mark the 40th anniversary of the NPAs, which were created back in 1982 as grassroots neighborhood organizations in each of Burlington's ward that are encouraged to through which we really encourage resident participation in city government. So in our bylaws, which I have up here, right, it says from stop signs to major development projects to music to the items on the agenda tonight, the NPAs, or at least we try to offer innovative ways for folks to get involved in their neighborhood and city issues and to make their opinions heard. So we really appreciate you all being here tonight, and we think we have, or hope we have, a great agenda for you all. As is always the case, the first item on our agenda is a public forum period. And when we were developing this agenda, I know that a part of it was, as it has been in years in the past, the fact that this month is April, and April is the month of Earth Day. And I know we have some people here for public forum to speak on climate-related issues. So, Scott, I don't know if it would be okay for me to turn to you first. You reached out wanting to speak at public forum. If your team's here, we'd love to hear from you.
Sure. Yeah, it's me and Zoe here tonight. Just for a quick plug. So I'm Scott Gustin. I work for the city. I work for the Department of Permitting and Inspections. And so what does that have to do with Climate and Earth Day? Well, in my role with that department, I staff the city's conservation board. And a couple of months ago, I guess more than a couple of months ago, time flies, the conservation board undertook or started to undertake an addendum to the city's open space protection plan. And it's focused on nature-based solutions to climate change. So Burlington's been really progressive over the years with energy policy in terms of generation and efficiency, but not so much focused on what role our natural areas and natural things like tree canopy and open spaces can play in that. And so, long story short, the board decided, well, let's fill this in, flesh this out. So at this point, we're sort of midstream in this effort. We had a well-attended summit on Zoom at the end of March, but we're continuing public outreach and engagement through the end of May with in a variety of formats, but we also have an online survey. And Ben, is there a way I can drop that address into the chat or share it with attendees tonight?
Yeah, it's I don't know if we have a chat feature enabled. I know we have a Q&A feature. If you wanted to drop it into the Q&A, we can see that, and we'll certainly add it into the minutes, which will be posted after the meeting. Okay. Liam, did you have another?
Yeah, I was just going to say, to add it to the Q&A, you just have to become an attendee. Like panelists are, they view the Q&A and the attendees posting the Q&A. Okay. So if you can drop yourself into an attendee, you can do that, or I can drop you into one if you want to post that in there.
Or Scott, if you just want to email it to me, we'll get it in the minutes too.
Or you can just do that too.
Perfect.
All right, so I'll either do that in a little bit or after the meeting. So yeah, basically we're looking at 5 different boxes or categories as we move through this effort. Forest and tree canopy, agriculture and community gardening, wetlands and water, and then lawns, smaller open spaces, and then finally green infrastructure. And what runs through all of those boxes are the relationships with our community. And as part of this effort, we're looking to flesh out strategies for how folks, the community, can engage in this and how they can be proactive in these nature-based solutions, and then finally articulate some actions that we can do and evaluate over time. And with that, I'll hand it over to Zoe to fill in any of the gaps that I left in all of that.
Thanks, Scott. I'll just say and add to that, you know, as a little bit of background, I think you did an awesome job. And I'll just introduce myself. My name is Zoe Richards, and I serve on the Burlington Conservation Board, and also in my other life, I direct the Burlington Wildways Partnership. You know, as a little bit of background, the UN suggested 2 years ago in their climate summit that a third of all climate action needs to come from nature-based solutions. And we feel like that's an area in which we've got a lot of potential, and it's a little bit unmet right now. We need to sort of frame that up and figure out how to do some of that work. So that's kind of the background. Nature-based climate solutions are cost effective relative to other kinds of climate solutions, and they bring many other added benefits to our residents. So things like, you know, making sure that we continue to keep the tree canopy we have and grow that, and have functional ecosystems that provide services to residents in the city. That's all part of this. So we're really excited about that. We're really excited to try to delineate what some of those nature-based solutions are, how we can involve the community in that, and how they can enrich our city. I'll also just make another plug that there's a city nature celebration coming up starting on Earth Day that has multiple partners in it. And we have a website, and I can put that together, but there are many pieces of that help celebrate our natural areas, including an online BioBlitz, which will use the iNaturalist platform, but we can share a link to that. Should be pretty fun. And some chances for some hands-on time out in the field as well. COVID safe, as much as we could provide safely.
Great. Thanks, Zoe. Zoe, Scott, if you have any links, as Shearson mentioned, if you want to send it, we'd be happy to put it in the minutes, which will be posted on the Ward 5 NPA website. Awesome. Anything further on your end?
No, that's it. We just wanted to make a quick plug. Thank you for the opportunity. Okay,
thanks a lot. I thought it'd be a great comment to start, given April is the month of Earth Day, and really appreciate all the work that you're doing. If folks have other comments for public forum, we ask that you please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. Just a couple pointers before we move further into public forum. One is that in an attempt to foster more of a community feel here, rather than host this as a webinar where there's panelists on one side and attendees on the other, we promote everyone to panelists, and we would welcome you to, if you'd like to turn on your video, or if you're not comfortable with that, feel free to keep it off as well. But as a panelist, you can turn on the video such that the community can see each other. The only thing we ask, of course, is that we keep this a safe and respectful place. And if there's any behavior or disrespect to the contrary, we have Liam here from CEDO, who, among other great assets, he's very quick to remove people. So we appreciate your being here, Liam, and appreciate everyone else being here and maintaining this respectful community feel. So again, if you have another comment for public forum, please raise your hand. Amanda, I see you raise your hand there, so please feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself. Welcome and thank you.
Hey, thanks for giving me time to speak. This is an issue that isn't particular to the South End, but I was just wondering how perhaps other neighbors feel about the news that Champlain College is planning on tearing down what was formerly a rental home and putting up green space. I'm pretty passionate right now about housing in our community. There's a dearth of affordable housing, and we don't have enough rental units for all the people that are in our community. We have a significant problem with people in our community now being housed in hotels and motels because there's not enough housing. So I know that the city itself is limited in what it can do with Champlain College. It is their private property. But I wonder if as a community, how do we feel about that? I know how I feel. And what could we do if we are passionate about maintaining the rental units that we do already have and the housing that we do already have in this community, hopefully adding more.
Thanks for your comment, Amanda. If folks, we would welcome other public comment on that in this forum. I don't know if folks wanted to get in touch with you. Again, it's a public recorded meeting, so I don't know if you want to drop your email or anything along those lines, but certainly if folks wanted to get in touch with you, we would welcome that too. And of course, as a steering committee, I think what I'll say is that I think that an agenda item on housing would be a great idea. It's something that we haven't done in quite some time. We did have a discussion with groups from A New Place and other communities in the area of homelessness. But the issue goes broader than that. And I know that the city is planning another housing summit, for example. So I think it would be a good idea for this NPA to weigh in on that discussion. I don't know if you had anything further, Amanda, but I do think it's a great point, and we'll certainly take it into consideration for future agendas. Anyone else for public forum? Again, we'd ask that you please use the raise hand feature. Nate, I see you raised your hand. Can you unmute yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Nate Lantieri, they, see him pronouns, and I'm on the steering committee. I'm also feeling a little bit under the weather today, so that's why I've had my video off. But I got two quick announcements while I'm here. So the first one being, if you or anybody that you know is celebrating Ramadan right now, there's an awesome nonprofit S group that's doing mutual aid food deliveries for the iftar meal at the end of the day to break fast. It's called the People's Kitchen. They're based out of South End, based out of Ward 5. And I know they're doing a meal delivery tomorrow evening and around 7. So if you or anybody you know would like to participate in that, you can look them up on Facebook. It's People's Kitchen. I volunteer with them a lot. It's a really great organization. And you should follow them anyways, because you might just be able to get a meal otherwise. And last year during the iftar meal delivery, there was a broadening of it so that it was for the general, the whole community. Some people could donate and kind of subsidize the cost of other people, of families and such. So that's one thing. Definitely do check that out. And the other thing is that Ben and I are also members on the Parks and Rec Commission for the city. And we are working together to coordinate a series of events over the rest of the year for Oakledge Park's 50th anniversary. And we're still relatively early into the planning on that, but we do have, the first event in that kind of stretch of things planned for May 1st for Green Up Day at Oakledge Park. So if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to Ben and I, and we'll also be within the next few days posting a sign-up form for volunteering over there. So basically what we can end up doing with that Green Up project kind of depends on how many folks are there. So if you're interested, or anybody who's interested and would like to, get out, feel free to be in touch. And if you'd like to, be involved in planning the rest of the events, we'd love to have that too. So I think Ben and I, we can put our email in the agenda as well, or the minutes as well.
Thanks, Nate, and thanks for mentioning the Oakledge 50th. I guess I would also mention to folks that if folks want to do something else for Green Up Day, well, we'd love to have you at Oakledge. I know that there's other partners in the South End. I think at Burlington Subaru, they're going to have some Green Up bags for people to pick up. I know that CCV has been posting to the Ward 5 Front Porch Forums about having Green Up Day bags if folks want to pick those up and contribute to cleaning up our neighborhood that way. So, but watch out for the link for Oakledge, because we'd love to have you all there on May 1st too. Kate Morris, I see that you have your hand raised. Please feel free to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hi. I'm excited about Green Up Day. I'll get in touch, Nate. I always do that and usually do it right around the neighborhood, but I'll join a group this year if you're doing something. I wanted to raise an issue that I had emailed Chip Mason about and did get a response, but it seems like an issue that could take some pressure just with the city. It's a traffic situation that probably anybody who lives right around here will have experienced if you walk or bike. At the corner of Flynn and Pine, the pedestrian signal goes on, and when you're crossing, cars turning south or turning left from the southbound Pine turn into the crosswalk that's lit, and it happens all the time. Everybody that I've spoken with who does cross that street has almost been hit, including kids going to school. And it's mainly, and I've been a driver in that situation, and I totally see why, because when you're driving southbound on Pine and you see there's a break, nobody's coming from the other way, you start to turn and then you see a pedestrian, or you see that the crosswalk is on, but there's no signal of that in advance. And I put it on C-Click Fix, and then saw that a year ago, someone else put the same exact complaint and same issue of like, I've almost been hit multiple times. And then someone else wrote in. And so many people have written in being like, me too. I just almost, my kids were just almost hit yesterday. And so it feels like something that should be escalated sooner than the year plus that it's already been. And I saw the most recent thing that Chip said was that the city engineer had heard about it and that they were doing some costing, but that there is kind of a queue of capital projects, which again, understandable, but this feels like a pretty high priority safety issue for our neighborhood. And so I just wanted to raise it here, see if people had other ideas of who would be the right people to reach out to kind of make some noise about it sooner.
Thanks, Kate. Really appreciate the comment. I think you made it on a good night too, because while not specific to Pine and Flynn, we do have a discussion on our agenda later on with respect to the Champlain Parkway. And for that, we do have representatives here in the meeting from the Department of Public Works. So I know they have now heard your comment. And I think I can echo what Councilor Mason said as well. I'm aware that there's a number of projects in the South End that are in the queue with respect to traffic. But I do know that it's the folks over at DPW, and I don't know if they would be able to address it during the presentation, or if there's someone here from DPW now who might be able to provide information as to who Kate may be able to reach out to.
Ben, I can speak to it if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Norm.
So I'm Norm Baldwin. I'm the city engineer, and we have been discussing this internally within our department on how to prioritize this along with all the other needs and interests of our signal work, signal traffic, signal capital work. One of the things that we discussed as a kind of a first step before we even can get to the stage of construction is to get more of crossing guards at that post. I believe that we doubled up the post coverage on that location, particularly for school children. I think we were most concerned about that. We recognize and understand the concern, and we're trying to figure out what we have to do from a capital reinvestment standpoint to make it better. But ultimately, the challenge is that I think people are not paying attention to pedestrians in the crosswalk, even though they're supposed to yield, largely because they are competing against that opposing northbound traffic. And so we're trying to figure out how best to respond. And it has been noted, and we have been in communications with Chip Mason, but just want you to know it's not being ignored. We understand how important it is to this community.
Thank you. And it's nice to see your face because your name was on one of the emails. So I'm glad to put a face with the name. Yeah. And thank you for taking it up. And yeah, I would, the crossing guards, I appreciate that. I would say we do walk that route every day, twice a day. And there haven't been two, there has been one most days. And I know it's hard to find people and people get sick and things like that, but it's, and that's super helpful. And just having a crossing guard. But I do, even as an adult, like when I'm walking, it happens all the time that people just drive right in there when you're in the middle of the crosswalk. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, Norm, if I could, so I'm so glad that you're here and that we were able to make this connection. And I know there's a process, and I know actually DPW actually recently revamped its process of considering these traffic projects. But if Kate, sort of outside of the four corners of See-Click-Fix, wanted to contact someone directly at DPW, would it be you? Would it be someone else? Are you able to provide that contact?
She can contact me directly if she like, or anyone can.
All right.
I don't know if you want to take my cell number, but you can. It's 316-6254.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Norm.
Yep.
Kate, are you good?
Great. Thanks so much. That was perfect. That was
perfect.
That
Glad we could accommodate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we are running a few minutes behind on public forum, but I think if we're going to run over on anything on our agenda, it should be public forum. And so if folks have other comments for public forum, we'd be happy to take one or two more. Joe, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, 10 seconds. We did have 2 crossing guards at that intersection for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and that ended maybe this week. But it was phenomenal. I mean, one of the guys was very aggressive with the drivers. I hope you weren't one of those drivers, but he got the job done. And the guy that's left is still getting the job done. It's just not as robust as having more bodies in the way, basically more brightly colored shirts in the way. But we often cross, it's because of where I live, but it's across a mid-block on Flynn. And, that isn't signaled. And that was one of the See-Click-Fixes that has been open recently too, to maybe we could do something more robust there, that relatively new crossing with those flashers or whatever. But I know all these things cost money and time. So yeah, definitely that corner is problematic. And that's exactly why I avoid it and go to the mid block. But that's because I, lived in this direction that I would bother to do that. So thanks again for bringing it up.
Thanks, Joe. Any other comments for public forum?
Yeah, I'll just unmute myself.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Scott Bobick, steering committee member, he, him. If you've enjoyed tonight's discussion, if you've enjoyed our previous discussions, if you enjoy the faces you see on your screen now, I would encourage you to consider coming to next month's meeting where we'll be having our steering committee elections. For more information about the election process, it's pretty straightforward. You can just review our bylaws or shoot me an email, scott.povic, as spelled on your screen right now, at gmail.com. Just want to get that announcement out there, and certainly be in touch if you're interested in joining the steering committee or just have more questions about what we're up to over here at the Ward 5 NPA. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. I do not see any other hands raised, but does anyone else have a comment for public forum? Okay, hearing none. I think we'll move to the next item on our agenda. We are really thrilled to have here with us this evening City Councilor Zariah Hightower, as well as Skylar Nash from the city's Office of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. The city has been hosting town halls and has been going around to all the NPAs to host community discussions on public safety. And we're really glad to be able to host this discussion now in Ward 5 and to have Councilor Hightower and Skylar here to moderate this part of the discussion. So Zariah and Skylar, would be happy to turn it over to you now.
Great. And Skylar, are you good with me starting off? We didn't maybe plan this quite as much as we could or should have. So I just want to start by saying hello. I think I don't know a lot of you, so great to see your faces. My name's Zariah Hightower. I've been in office for just over a year now. So I'm going to get us grounded a little bit. And in terms of public forum going over, I think that's fine. I don't think we're going to quite take up the full time slot, so that'll be perfect. I'm going to ground us a little bit just in terms of history and what we've done since June of last year. And just to give a little bit of background, I think a lot of you know there was a racial justice for economic and criminal justice resolution that passed in June of last year that created a joint committee between the Police Commission, which is a citizen-led body, and the Public Safety Committee, which is 3 city councilors. And I'm the chair of that joint committee. And so I'm just going to walk you through kind of what's been happening on that joint committee. And then I think Skylar will kind of go on what's been happening in the past couple of weeks and where we're going from there. And I'm saying that to cue him to what I think he's going to say. And so,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
If somebody can give permission to share my screen while Skylar talks.
Yeah. So my name is Skylar Nash. I am a public policy research analyst with the REIB department for the city. Sorry, sometimes I get tripped up on that title. I have been with the city since November. Amongst other things, I am the project manager for both the Talitha and a proud dog father, as you can hear. The project manager for the Talitha Consult public community visioning of public safety process, as well as the freshly started CNA Consult BPD functional and operational assessment process. And so with the Talitha team, we've been working to get on community engagement now for the past month and a half or so, maybe month to 2 months. This work started off with 2 workshops engaging community stakeholders, that was organizations and individuals that were identified by the Joint Committee early on in this process. That then led to a presentation at the Wards 1 and 8 NPA. We've also been to Wards 2 and 3 and Ward 6, and most recently had a town hall event about now 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. Zariah, somewhere around time feels like a flat circle to me at this point. And I recognize that there may be some people on this call who had trouble getting into that town hall. I can certainly apologize and take the blame for that, of making, not making sure that ran as smoothly as it should have, but to hopefully rectify that and give as many people as possible the chance to engage with this process. We're going to be hosting another citywide town hall on April 27th that the REIB will be hosting and putting on, and the Talitha team will be facilitating. And so we're going to be, over the next 2 weeks, blasting that information out. We now have a newly formed website on the city website that is an overview of both the Talitha and the CNA processes with their RFP responses, the executed contracts. That's where we'll be posting dates for community engagement, Zoom information, as well as using Front Porch Forum, the NPAs, the city calendar, and then just our own personal networks to make sure that we can get the word out to as many people as possible. In addition to that town hall on the 27th, there will also be a public survey that Talitha will be putting together as an additional outlet for people to take part and make their voices heard in this process.
Great. So we actually switched it around and you got what's happening next first. And then I'm just going to cover, because it's a little bit of it's been kind of a confusing time generally, and there's been a lot happening at once. So just to ground folks, June 29th is when the racial justice resolution passed, which created the joint committee. The committee first met on August 14th. In that meeting, we decided on some priorities, specifically 3. I laid out some priorities and folks agreed with them, which is a split into 2 assessments, which the first assessment was supposed to be more of a community visioning process, which Talitha ended up taking on. The second one was supposed to be more focused on Burlington Police Department specifically, so an assessment of the police department and alternatives specifically. And the third thing was just having any kind of short-term needs met. And so that was kind of our first meeting on the 14th. And then by the 27th, we'd had a draft of that first RFP, so the one around community visioning. In September, we started working on the second draft of the RFP. It took about a month for the city to post the first RFP after we'd completed it. On October 22nd, we selected Talitha Consults to go forward with due diligence. So that basically means checking their references. And just to clarify, RFP is request for proposals. So it's what the city puts out when they want to engage a consultant. On October 26th, we'd met again and said, okay, we have checked the references. Let's move forward with Talitha Consultants. On November 5th, we approved the second RFP, so the one on the Burlington Police Department, for posting on the city website. On December 3rd, we had our first introduction with Talitha Consultants. We met the principal and some members of their team, but they didn't have a contract yet. So we're waiting for the city attorney's office to finalize a contract with them. There were some issues on insurance and it ended up taking quite a while, which you'll see that we didn't finalize it until the next year, even though we approved it end of October. December 22nd, we met and reviewed all of the proposals we'd gotten, which was 11 or 12 for that second RFP, and moved CNA forward for due diligence. Moving into this year, January 5th, we had a quick reference check-in for CNA, but just because we had finalized it on the 22nd, it was holidays, folks were getting slow in getting back to us. And so we met again on January 15th and proved CNA, and then we're still waiting on a contract with Talitha Consultants, so we didn't have to kick off with them until February 1st, which was definitely later than anticipated, since we'd approved the request for proposals way back when in August. So that took quite a long time. February 22nd, we had a good check-in with Talitha. We're waiting on the CNA contract. And the 23rd and 25th, Talitha had organizational inputs. As part of the request for proposal, we'd had a list of, I don't know, maybe 20 to 30 NGOs or organizations around the city that provide services. So things like A New Place and Skylar, I don't know if you know some of the organizations better than I do. I'm drawing a blank, but basically organizations around the city that provided public safety style services, and asked them what they thought they were providing very well and where some of the gaps were. And then March 15th, we had a check-in with Talitha, and the mayor came in, and that's when I think you all might have heard in the news, we had the question of who would be managing the CNA contract, which then ended up being the REIB office. And on March 30th, Talitha had their first town hall, which Skylar was referencing, April 8th, so just last week. The committee had our kickoff with CNA, so we got to meet some of the staff, and I'm very excited to have them on board. I think they're going to do a really good job. I think they have a very strong history in assessing police departments. They don't have as strong of a history in proposing alternatives, but they seem like a very competent and professional team. And I think they've got a good methodology for how they're going to do the work. And then, as Tyler referenced, on April 27th at 6:15, we'll have that second town hall. And that's kind of all we have for you. I'm going to unshare just for the sake of seeing faces, but happy to reshare that timeline if it makes sense in terms of questions, and happy to take questions. Also, if anybody wants to give us feedback, I think one of the things we're looking for feedback on is especially if you can't make it to the town hall on the 27th, is, if there's anything that you think public safety in a very broad scope, and what that means for Burlington, what's going particularly well and what's maybe not. We're happy to feed that back to Talitha Consult so they can incorporate that. But other than that, your feedback would be great to have on the 27th. That was a lot of words at you, so the rest of the time is just happy to hear thoughts and feedback. And anything else?
I can't raise my hand. Is it okay to? So thank you for putting together the town halls, and Skylar, I think I emailed you. I was curious, and this is not, Skylar is not blaming, and you took the blame for this. It's not. There were a lot of things going on, like 2 different timelines right there out in the Midwest. But going forward, just wanted to hear 2 questions. Like, the last time it was hard because there were some mistakes on the timing and the link didn't work. And it was very hard to figure out who the point person was. So going forward, are you planning on listing like your contact info so that people know contact you? And are you going to be the one? Because I think there were some issues with the last time. It was like there were different people posting in different communities. Do you have access to all of the front porch forums?
Yeah, so we on the city side have taken complete control of the outreach efforts this time around. I'm just finishing up a flyer that we're going to use to disseminate on Front Porch Forum, Twitter, Facebook, to pass around. That'll have the Zoom information, the time. I'll be listed as the main point of contact on that with my email and phone number, so that God forbid, I'll knock on wood, if there are any issues, either beforehand or a day of, that people will know they can send me an email or call my phone, and I will be responsive.
That's awesome. I think that's going to be so helpful. The other question is, it's a comment that I brought up before. Throughout this process, there have been a lot of us who have been engaged in conversations, but it seems like I know that people are passionate about the topic, but they're not showing up. And at the end of the day, to get broad buy-in into whatever we come up with this transformation, it seems really important to get more people to actually show up. How else? Because, when we talk about even this forum, we're a very small segment of the community, even the people that are on Front Porch Forum. So how else are we getting the word out so that as many people as possible are showing up? And are there other ways for them to participate besides the internet?
Yeah, I know that that's been a frustration of mine. And I think anytime you're leading a project that has a massive community engagement aspect of it, that's the constant question is like, how can we get more people to turn out? Certainly this time around, like you said, we're going to be using Front Porch Forum. We're going to be using social media. We're going to be utilizing police commissioners and city councilors' personal and professional networks, utilizing the city calendar, different organizations who have been kind of involved in this work. We're going to be using them to get outreach to their people. But then also, I just have to continue to ask community members and community organizations to show up. We can only do so much in terms of getting the word out, but I recognize with highly emotional issues like this, sometimes it can be uncomfortable for people to show up. But ultimately, we have to get where we are.
Thanks, Skylar, and thanks, Amanda, for those great questions. We still have about 15 minutes here in the agenda with Skylar and Councilor Hightower. And so we'd be happy to take any additional questions with respect to the process. I guess the other point that I would make for folks who are here is, I understand folks, some were not able to make the last town hall, and I really appreciate that we're doing another town hall, but also understand that with schedules, people may not have an opportunity to make that either. And so I appreciate, Councilor Hightower, you're mentioning that, folks beyond questions about the process, if they had comments or feedback with respect to the substance, we're really glad to have you two here. So would welcome comments from the group this evening in that area as well. Khalil, I see your hand's raised if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Khalil Zaloom. I have a quick question, I guess for Soraya. I've been trying to follow this topic pretty closely for the past few months, and just level setting, listening on police commission meetings, things like that. How does the work with Talitha align with Mr. Dobson's report, all the other things? I mean, there's been so much back and forth with the mayor's office, and I got to be honest, as trying to follow it, it just seems like a lot of battles. And is this work moving forward with Talitha a little more aligned between the mayor's office and the commission? I just love to get a little more clarity on that.
Yeah, and if you could just, sorry, I missed how is the work with Talitha aligning with
Mr. Dodson provided that report that, we'll say was maybe insufficient in its assessment, but is this a substitute for that work? Is it a complement to that work? Is it a continuation of that work? it's hard to tell how much of this is aligned between the mayor's office and the commission, and are they separate paths, or how is this moving forward in a cohesive way?
Yeah, I would say that this has been separate from Kyle Dotson's work. I have a lot of personal feelings on Kyle Dotson, and I'll try to keep that out of it. But to some extent, I think there could have been a stronger marriage, especially, I mean, it's just been very confusing because as a counselor, of course, I'm not a department head who can sign contracts. And so to some extent, I think we thought initially that a lot more of this work would overlap with the director of police transformation. And then just because of delays and because of timing and partially also because of just personal conflicts, it just didn't happen. In terms of going forward, I have check-ins with the mayor almost every Friday, along with the director of the REIB office, Taisha Green, a community member, and sometimes others from the mayor's administration. And so I think this started off on a really rocky, and it's hard to say how much of like it being start and stop is just like bureaucracy and how much of it has just been like political things. But I think we're in a really good place now. I think the lines of communication between the joint committee and the city council are improving. I mean, the police commission and the city council are improving. I think the lines of communication between the council and the mayor's office are improving. So I'm pretty hopeful for the second part of the contract. I also think like the joint committee has a staff person again, and now we've actually got a manager like for the contracts. Like there were just a lot of things in place, not in place at the beginning that should have been. As we're all kind of trying to figure it out. And so I think we have it figured out. It took us 6 or 7 months, but I think we are more aligned going forward, and that it's going to have a much better outcome for the CNA contract, which is also a bigger contract with just kind of more staff. And I think a more professional team that I think will need less than a city team, but I think that they will have an easier time getting that support both from the joint committee and from city staff. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was a great summary. That's really helpful. And I'm very eager to take part in the town hall on the 27th. I was one of the people trying to get in on the last one, just not able to. So glad that there's another chance there. Thank you.
Great, and thanks for your patience with that. I'm glad folks are open to trying again, coming to the second town hall.
Absolutely.
And Ben, I see Carolyn's had her hand up for a while, so.
Oh, great. Carolyn, can you go ahead and just unmute yourself? Thank you.
Am I unmuted now? I don't know.
Yeah, you're all good. Thank you.
Okay. I keep forgetting what I've done. I'm coming into this like pretty much right now. I keep hearing about public safety, but I don't even have a definition for what you're talking about when you need public safety. And then it sounds like for the past 6 or 7 months, you've just been trying to organize one committee over another, and confusion and no contracts. Have you just made any decisions on any policies? Or is it just committees now trying to come up with questions in which to answer? I'm coming into this, I said, really right now, first time, and I don't understand what you're doing.
Yeah, so the first part of that kind of that 2020 timeline, when I say drafting an RFP, that's the committee kind of deciding what our questions are. So that's saying, here's the questions we want to answer about, public safety. And it's funny that you say, like, I don't know how to define public safety. I think we had like a 30-minute discussion about that on joint committee until I was like, okay, we all clearly have different definitions. I don't know what the most important thing is. So I'll give you, I guess, a working definition at the end. But so creating the RFPs was the committee saying, like, here's the questions that we want people to answer. Here's some of the things that are important to us in answering those questions, and like putting them out there. And so then the consultants, or like all the different consultancies applying, was then we would review however many applications we got and say, okay, who do we think has the best methodology for answering the questions that we have? So the questions are set. The methodology for answering the questions has been set. Talitha Consultants is really supposed to be answering the questions. And I don't, it's been a while since I drafted that RFP, so forgive me if it's not exactly right. But basically, how... Skylar, do you remember the questions? I usually have a post-it note on my...
I don't remember the specific questions, but how I've kind of described this relationship is that Talitha is helping us define all the components that the community sees as contributing to the safety of the community, public safety, and that includes policing, but it also goes beyond policing. And so they're helping us to kind of flesh out and define, they're helping us to define working from home is fun.
I can take over, Skylar. Yeah. So basically, defining what it means to be safe and healthy in Burlington, and who is providing those services and where the gaps are and who we think should fill them is broadly, I think, how we define those questions. The second, and really getting community input on that. The second assessment is supposed to be more about who, when, and how we're policing, and what some of the other models are around the country and alternatives to that. So, and the way that we have framed that is really a menu of options in terms of where we're at and what the possibilities are on where to go from here. So that, and we've really tried to emphasize to the consultant that we're looking for a menu. I know that there's been a lot of discussion around specifically the number of police officers that we have. And just want to be clear that the mandate that we gave them, at least, was not to come up with a final number. We don't think that's really for consultants to decide, but to say this number and this this organizational chart can get you this, this number, and this organizational chart can get you this. And then we as a community can kind of decide from between that. So questions are created. We have a methodology for answering them. Both of the contracts are now underway to help collect some of that information. For example, the second contract, the BPD assessment, they've got calls out for information for samples of different kinds of information from the police department, which again is kind of to their rigorous process of the way that they've assessed other police departments. And then the output of this, I guess, will be those reports that kind of give something on that. The other thing and that's really the main work. That is the main work of what the Joint Committee has done. The other piece that we've looked at is there was a community community oversight of police work that happened at the end of the, mostly end of last year. And so the Joint Committee weighed in on that. And then there's been an equitable sharing discussion. So there's a program where if through some, criminal activity or otherwise, if the police department gets possession of those things, they can auction them off in a way that creates a pocket of money that can basically be given back to police departments. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, but we're started to have and then postponed to make sure we could focus on these contracts, a discussion around how we want to handle that going forward. Does that answer your question, Carolyn?
It would be good to see these questions that you're asking them to find out about. So we have some time to sort of think about them ourselves instead of just them doing it.
Yeah, and those should be, Skylar, correct me if I'm wrong, on that website that Skylar was talking about, and I assume we can share that. I don't know how you all share your notes at the end, but we can provide that link.
Okay. Yeah, I think everyone should sort of see it. Let them start answering and thinking about those questions. You'll get a much broader scope. And if then they go to ask us how we want to answer them, we'll at least have had some thinking. You often have to think and then take a walk and go for a swim or something and then forget about it. And then the answer will kind of fall down right in front of you.
think that's
part of this process is also going to be that public survey that will be offered to people, and so that'll be just yet another opportunity where you're not as much put on the spot as you might be in taking part in the Zoom meeting to give more feedback on this.
Sharon, I see that you have your hand raised. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, thanks.
Hi, thanks. I'm Sharon O'Neill. I live at the end of the South End, and listening to this, I wasn't making the connection before, but I'm wondering in this study and the questions being asked, is there consideration being given for future growth and future development? Because I live right next door to where the Higher Ground project has been approved, and currently at the current location, Higher Ground receives, I forget the actual number now, but if you look at it over the course of a year, it's like 3 police calls. And so those typically would have been handled by South Burlington, and now they'll be handled by Burlington. And I'm just curious if that's part of the project to include concerns about future growth, or just as things are today.
Yeah. And I was wondering, I was like, you look familiar to me. And then when you said the higher ground piece, I was like, oh, I know why, because I used to be on the DRB. And
yeah, and there I was.
Yes. So the second assessment, that's specifically looking at the Burlington Police Department. They're looking at both, I guess, like historic calls, current, like historic demand basically for police services, current demand for police services, and like potential future demand for police services. So whether or not that will necessarily come up in their things is unclear, but like if somebody will specifically mention the Higher Ground, but the joint committee is going to have a focus group with them. So I can note it down to mention it there.
Okay. I was going to say if like what could the community do to make sure that that's a consideration? Did I just do it? Did I just tell you?
I think you just did that on that specific issue. I think on issues generally, going through the Talitha process, so in the survey, bringing things up so that they can bring it to, because Talitha consultants, kind of their end product will also go to CNA, so that CNA knows kind of how the community more broadly is thinking about things and what they're worried about. And so, yeah, I would include it in the survey as well, if you can answer that.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions for Skylar and Zariah? Frank McLaughlin, I see you with your hand raised.
Yeah, I'm Frank McLaughlin. I live off of Birchcliff Parkway. And it isn't really a question. It was just a comment that, so this is the first time that I've lived here for about 20 something years. And it's the first time I've really engaged in this meeting. So I know that Front Porch Forum, and at least in our neighborhood, it's small. We don't use it a ton, but there's enough on there that we talk to each other about it. We see some comments or postings. So I just want to say that I'm going to commit to, after seeing the invite to the forum come, to then myself put it out there to my neighbors. Hey, I'm going. Why don't, if anybody feels like joining, please have at it. Join with me, whatever. I was talking with my wife, and we just said that sometimes you get these notices on Front Porch Forum, and it will mean a little bit more if it comes from somebody in your, basically right off your front porch. So I just wanted to say that was a thought I had, and that's what I'll be planning on doing.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Frank. I think that's great. I mean, we find that on our steering committee, actually, that actually reaching out and making that personal connection and inviting people to come to these meetings grows them quite a bit. We have a couple more minutes here. If anyone else has any questions for Councilor Shannon, I see you with your hand raised. Looks like you're muted, Joan. Sorry.
Sorry, I had accidentally unmuted myself before and forgot I muted myself back. But, But many thanks to Zariah and Skylar for coming here tonight and taking the time to go through all of this. I really appreciate that. But I thought that Talitha was going to the NPAs, and I wondered, is Talitha coming to the Ward 5 NPA, or because I thought the other NPAs were going through some of this process directly with Talitha. Is that correct, or am I haven't actually seen what they're doing, but I know that they're going to other NPAs.
That was initially the hope, was that Talitha would be able to do a presentation at each NPA, but just because of the timeline that they were operating on, we found that it might be more effective to try to put on more massive town halls like the one that we're doing on the 27th, but that Zariah and I, and particularly me, could travel to the NPAs that hadn't had time to kind of talk more intimately about the Talitha and now the CNA processes and try to answer questions about what has happened and what's coming next.
Was Talitha gathering information from the public at those previous meetings? That I think they did 1-8 and they did the New North End, right? Did they do any others?
No.
Okay.
So yes, to the question of if they were gathering, and that's part of the reason, Skylar, correct me, he's the manager, but I think they're noting if they hear from anybody twice, and kind of aggregating that information together then. Yeah, and I think, because originally I think they'd asked for not very much time with each NPA, and then I kind of encouraged them that wasn't sufficient kind of in terms of getting feedback on a really complicated subject. And then we just realized that trying to schedule even, a month out an NPA, an hour's worth of time, a lot of the NPAs just didn't have the time, and trying to move it out to May was just starting to really extend the timeline.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also so I know last week, Skylar, you told me that you were working on the website, and Jordan did send me the website, but then when I just want to go back and find it, I still don't find it on the REIB website or the police website or anywhere. I even searched it on the city website, but maybe I don't know what to search. I still cannot find that website. So can that go up on the REIB website and maybe the police website?
Yeah, it's not going to go up on the. It's not going to go up on the REIB website, but if you go to the police's website under their submenu, and they have a police transformation menu item, and there's a BPD assessment tab, and when you click that, that'll lead you to that website, and we can also put the link in.
Okay, I think I just did that, but did not get that result.
Could you just tell me the name? Sorry, I'm Lucia. I'm taking notes and having the same trouble pinning this down. Would you mind just tell me the name of the website, and then I'm certain I can find it on the BPD site.
Sorry, I'm on my phone, so I'm trying to go back and forth between.
No, that's okay. I think everyone is going so much back and forth. Thank you so much, Skylar.
It looks like if you have the main city website in there, burlingtonvt.gov, and then /BPD-assessment is the link.
And I did just find it there. So thank you very much, Skylar.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, super helpful. Thank you.
And I apologize. I came in late because I had to work late tonight. And Skylar, you were putting up your timeline, but I still don't see that on the website, and I wasn't able to absorb it in the few minutes that it was up before me on this Zoom. So upcoming meetings, is it just the town hall meeting on the 27th? Is there any other public meeting about this?
So the timeline was mine, and that was for the joint committee, which I can share with Skylar. I don't know if it makes sense to, I will.
No, I saw that. I thought Skylar had one that included the public meeting. No? Oh, sorry. It did flash before me. I wasn't able to absorb that. So what are the public meetings that are planned?
The only public meeting scheduled right now for Talitha is the next town hall, which will be April 27th, a Tuesday at 6:15. And we just generated the Zoom link for that and are finishing up a flyer that'll be sent out in addition to its posting on that website as well as the city calendar.
Well, I think Frank is exactly right. The organic sharing of this information is definitely the best way to get people to show up. And so I would encourage everybody who's here tonight to try and do that. And maybe if we are all sharing that on our Front Porch Forum and engaging in a discussion, hopefully we'll get a good turnout. Because I spent 15 minutes in the other meeting that I couldn't initially get into. And it was not really a very diverse group that showed up. And I think that if we want to have broad community buy-in, we need broad community participation in the process. So thank you for your efforts to do that, Skylar and Zariah.
I'm just going to jump back in again. I found the site and it's got everything we've been talking about, all of the links, all of the questions, Carolyn, that you were asking about, et cetera. So I'll be sure that's in the minutes. It's really quite useful. So thanks again for your help navigating to that.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for sharing that. And please, if there's anything that people find would be helpful in addition to the information that we have on there, would love feedback. Just want to make sure that this is as transparent and helpful as possible.
I don't think the date of the town. Oh yes, the date of the town meeting is there.
Well, Skylar and Zariah, echo the comments. Really appreciate all the work that you've done on this. Appreciate your coming and meeting with our NPA this evening. We'll look forward to joining you at the April 27th town hall, and as an NPA, circulating that information to folks as well. Carolyn, I will tell you that from the other NPAs that Talitha and the other town hall they did, their videos are online. And while there's a frustrating element to not being able to speak up and engage, I found a lot of value in actually going back and watching those videos and hearing comments from other neighbors. So I think that would be another resource as well, is to go back and watch those other NPA videos. Skylar, Zariah, I don't know if you had any parting thoughts, but just really appreciate your joining us tonight.
Will you post those links for those?
Yeah, we can put that in there too. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And also the link for the other town hall meeting that happened. Can we get a link for that?
Yeah, we can put those all in our minutes, which will be posted on our Ward 5 CEDO webpage.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing folks on the 27th. And also just because we've got time to get the word out, appreciate that being a central theme. I do hope it'll be a broad group.
Great. And Skylar, I think I saw on social media, was yesterday your birthday?
Yeah, it was my birthday yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
The day after your birthday. So.
Happy birthday.
Okay.
There's no place I'd rather be.
Yeah, right.
That's good.
Well, thanks very much for being here. I think we'll move to the next item on our agenda tonight. As Nate mentioned earlier, both Nate and I also serve on the Parks Commission, and a great honor in doing that is once a month, if not more, we get a window into the awesome, innovative, creative work that the Parks Department does for all of us here in Burlington. I would say especially over the last year in expanding outdoor opportunities and lowering barriers to entry into their programs. And it's just, they do amazing work. And we're really thrilled to have Cindy White and the Parks Department team with us here this evening for an update on what they've been doing and what's coming up for the coming year. So we'll turn it over to you all. Great backgrounds too.
Yeah, we come matching and coordinating. Yeah. I get to do the introduction, and then I'll turn it over to the rest of the team. I'm Diana Wood, the Marketing and Outreach Manager for the City of Burlington Parks, Recreation, and Waterfront Department. Thank you for having us. And I wanted to introduce our team. You know Cindy White, our Director. And then we have Sophie Sauve, she's our Comprehensive Planner. And we have Max Madalinsky and John Adams-Kolitz. They're both project managers, planners on the team. And we're gonna do a presentation. I think Sophie will be able to share screen. And we're going to cover a bunch of projects that are going on. It's a lot, and there's a lot going on. And we'll focus on the stuff that's happening in your end, and then some of the other things that are happening in some regional parks. So hopefully there'll be some time for Q&A, but we'll get you up to speed in a very overview sort of way. I also wanted to add a little plug we're going to have Kids Week happening in May. So stay tuned for that. There's going to be actual in-person events, not like the big waterfront event like we usually do, but we'll have something. And July 3rd fireworks of some sort. We're still planning those, so keep a lookout for that. And I will turn it over to Sophie.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. Can everyone see my screen? Yes, thank you. So as Diana said, we're going to provide you an overview of what's happening in your ward, but also the larger city. And it's just a glimpse into some of the projects that are active and we're working on or that are upcoming. But of course, we're open to questions and answers afterwards. And just to give you an idea of some of the icons we use in our public outreach process, and we've identified in some of our slides, the light bulb is when we're at a point where we're collecting ideas. So we're really looking for public input into the part that we're at in a process of planning for a park. The pencil is we're working on designing. So we've done the collecting the first or second round of input, and either ourselves or design teams are working on developing alternatives, which means we might go back to light bulb and garnering more input on those alternatives. And then the check mark means that the projects are, we've gone through these 2 steps and they're ready to build. So the first park we'll just give you an overview of is Callahan Park. We are currently in the early stages of a master planning process, with our first public meeting coming up on Thursday, May 13th. We've hired consultants, a consultant team to look at options for the future of Callahan Park, but also first evaluating what works, what doesn't work, what's missing, and how to move forward essentially with Callahan in the future. And everybody is encouraged to sign up at our for the meeting and attend. And we would welcome any feedback then. Or there is also, I should say, there's also a community feedback, community survey that's available on our project page, and that's the web link at the bottom. And I'm sure you've noticed that as part of that, or can note that as part of that process, we'll also be identifying how to move forward with the playground, since the tot lot was removed late last year due to safety concerns. And also there's some portions of it, the other playground that that are in need of addressing this year. So know that that's in our capital plan in the very near future to replace the playground. Max, I'll hand it over to you.
Hi, everyone. So at Champlain Street Park, we are planning to pick back up with the park redesign and replacement of the playground potentially. We had done some outreach around this a while back, but with COVID, we kind of had to shift some of our project priorities, and we're hoping to return to this one in the fall and sort of finish the planning for that project.
On the Burlington Greenway, hopefully many of you have had a chance to get out on the recently reopened sections that go through the west side of Ward 5. This season we'll be putting the finishing touches on those sections with a little bit of a landscape dress up and some fence work at Hula. From there, we've already started some work in what we call the realignment section of the Greenway in the central waterfront, where the city is realizing a long-term goal of a full west of the tracks alignment for the bike path. The bike path will no longer have to go over railroad tracks. And that, of course, is due to the city's successful negotiation with Amtrak and the railroad to get the train in the rail yard overnight. So like I said, construction will start on that in the coming weeks and last for the rest of the season. And there'll be a detour around those few blocks for the next several months. And then finally in Oak Ledge Park, we will redo the last sections of the Greenway. Probably by July, we'll start at the south end of the park at Austin Drive and work our way north. And Oak Ledge Park, happy birthday to Oak Ledge. It turns 50 this year. Thanks to Ben and Nathan for organizing what sounds like a months-long celebration. We're going to be happy to support that. We are about to go out to bid for the universally accessible playground, long-standing project that we're really looking forward to completing, and we'll also be redoing restrooms and rain garden, entrance road and stuff in the coming years.
Similarly to Callahan Park, Perkins Pier is undergoing a siting study, and we've also hired a consulting team to help support that work. We had a public meeting in March where we garnered a lot of feedback on everybody's wants and needs for Perkins, both land side and marina side of the park. And we'll have our second public meeting in early May 18th, which everybody is invited to attend. It's another virtual meeting where our consultants will come back and propose some alternatives for the future of Perkins Pier. And if you missed the first meeting, it was recorded by Town Meeting, Channel 17, and that's available on our project page. The link is there, and John was also interviewed by media about the work that's ongoing. And if you don't want the audio in the full meeting, there's also the slides available to kind of get a recap. So please feel free to check that out. And upcoming projects on the water side, our moorings will get replaced and repaired in the fall to avoid safety issues there. The climate change and change in wind and wave action has really worn the moorings down. That's part of the reason that's in our early capital plan. And then later we'll be looking at playground replacement, Lyman building repairs or replacement as part of results of the master planning or siting study process.
At 311 North Avenue, we have a number of different projects going on. Right now, we have an architect on board who is looking at architectural design to turn the historic stone house there into a public space. And coming from that, we'll be initially implementing repairs to the roof of that original historic building, and hopefully down the line, working on the implementation of that design. Also, right now, our conservation and land steward team has a comprehensive management plan document that they're drafting and working on the public outreach for. That is ongoing, and you may see some different components of that public outreach at some point this summer. And down the line in the next year or so, we are going to be planning some improvements to the natural surface trail that goes through 311 North Avenue, both starting from North Ave, kind of coming in around the community gardens there. And then eventually that will connect to a paved pathway that will go all the way from the Burlington Greenway up to North Avenue through the Cambrian Rise development. And that will be an ADA accessible pathway.
At the A-Dog Skate Park, our maintenance crews are working on sourcing replacement coping. The skate park is so popular that the metal edge at the top of the large bowl has worn out. They'll be taking care of that in the coming weeks. And the skate park area welcomed 3 new to the skate park trees that we were able to transplant via tree spade from the area near Perkins, where we're going to redo the bike path in the coming months.
At Arms Forest, we just had our first kickoff meeting for the design and construction of our first segment of trails, sort of connecting from the base of the hill at the high school to not quite the bike path, a little bit shy of that, to an existing trail segment. And that work will be ongoing, they're working on the design now, and they expect to start in late June, early July, with that sort of ongoing for 2 or 3 weeks.
Battery Park. The city has long recognized Battery Park as one of our more important civic spaces, occupying a strategic spot between downtown and the waterfront. With that in mind, Battery will be one of our, probably our 4th or 5th park to be master plan coming up in fiscal year 25. And after we finish master planning the park, we will start with implementing playground and the Central Plaza redesign.
The boathouse is in need of attention, and in 22 we'll be hiring a consultant to examine its needs. So developing a scoping study, and from the results of that study, we will be needing capital funds or funds to implement the results of that study to make sure that the boathouse is there for a long time to come.
At Letty Park, we have a number of projects that are coming down the line, but in the short term, the wooden staircase that goes down to the beach just behind the arena is going to be replaced, hopefully within the next month here. A new steel structure has been sent out for fabrication and powder coating, and should be coming back up here in early May for our site contractor to lift it into place with the crane. And then we also are actively working on finalizing some updates and permitting related to the Letty Park Pause Place and exercise station. It'll be sort of something similar to the exercise areas you see out in the urban reserve, but located kind of at the intersection of the Burlington Greenway and the pathway to the ice arena. That'll include landscape improvements and that kind of thing. And then in the upcoming years, we have a master plan at Letty, which really is bringing together some previous public input and a whole slew of community generated projects that came out of that public input, really trying to cite those and then follow those up with design in a more detailed way after they're sort of placed in the master plan. And then in the years following that, it'll just be implementing and constructing all of those great projects. At North Beach Campground, we had an active winter. We tore down the former maintenance building that was located between the two main roads coming into the campground and out of the campground. And we are now in design stages for construction-ready design documents to build those pull-through RV sites shown there, as well as the reconfigured main entry road for the campground. So sort of separating out campground traffic from just general beach traffic and creating a 2-lane roadway that goes all the way down to the beach with a dedicated pedestrian sidewalk so that people don't have to walk in the road like they currently do. And then as we sort of wrap up those designs, we'll be looking in future years to secure funding to get them all built.
And aside from the individual projects happening at different parks, we have system-wide funding allocated for different pieces of everyday maintenance and safety, including playground compliance, playground safety standards, improving lighting, community garden improvements, by expanding our bike racks throughout our parks, and as well as signage and wayfinding, and then looking at implementing some of our restroom design standards across the different parks. And that's all we have for this evening, and we welcome questions if there's time.
Awesome. Thank you, Sophie, Max, Diana, John, and Cindy for that great presentation. I'm always blown away by all the work that you're doing. We are running about 10 minutes behind or so, but would be happy to take 1 or 2 questions from folks. Joe, I see that you have your hand raised. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen.
I don't have it.
Oh, you don't have it, Steve? I think that...
I don't have a raised hand. Apparently not. I know it looks like it. I've used them before. It's not showing up on my screen now.
Well, if you have a question, why don't we go to Joe, and then Steve would be happy to come to you after.
It'll be quick.
Yeah.
The penny for parks is, I guess, not going to be a revenue neutral change for this reassessment. A lot of people have seen an increase in their home value. And I wonder if a lot of these projects are sort of in anticipation of a revenue increase, and sort of whether you have any gauge for what the difference is for your area. I don't know if all your funding came from that one revenue non-neutral source, but I'm just curious about that.
I'd be happy to touch on that one. So we've got a 5-year plan for the parks, and we've been anticipating that there'll be some increase, giving us some goals looking out. But for now, we're really we're on a wait and see, because we don't want to get too excited, because a little bit more money allows us to do more improvements for the parks, as playgrounds deteriorate and such. So we're hoping to see the full. So I am a city resident, so it's my taxes too, but I have to admit that I would love to give a little bit more money and get Penny for Parks fully funded, because it's a great opportunity to get capital money to help with our neighborhood parks.
Yep. $1.50 is fine with me.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Cindy.
Now we're going to have to redo all our marketing. Jeez.
Steve, did you have a question? We're running about 10 minutes behind, but we'd be happy to take your question.
Just a thought. Years ago, the city worked pretty hard. The Parks Bar worked pretty hard to get a BIG grant from the state and federal government. It's a voting infrastructure grant. And for whatever reason, the mayor never accepted the grant. The city was awarded it. You think you might try again to get that kind of a grant if you're looking for money? I think it was about $1.5 million. The city just let it go. It was for Perkins Pier.
Yep, I'm happy to touch on that one. So there was $1 million, there was some money from the federal, but there was a lot of money required from the city for bonds. And there was also there was a revenue bond, and there was additional private fundraising. So there was a lot of money. I think the federal money was just a portion of the larger project. And so depending on what the outcomes of as a Perkins Pier Marina, whether or not we would be going for that grant again. Part of it is we don't know if there's still that need for a build out of marina still. Lake Champlain Transportation has done a big build out. Just this summer, you'll see that there's the new marina on the other end. So we may be focusing on land side, but that's part of the reason why we're doing the Perkins Pier master plan. So we're looking at the full picture.
Thanks, Cindy, and thanks, Steve, for that question. I think we'll have to leave it there. Thank you all for that great presentation. Shearston, fellow steering committee member, has dropped to the attendee side and has been dropping links into the Q&A, including a link, I know, to the Parks website, such that I'm assuming folks would be able to get in touch with you by finding contact information there, as well as on behalf of the Parks Commission. I'll put in a plug that our meetings are public and are usually the first Tuesday of every month. So would love to see folks there as well. So again, thank you very much to the Parks team. Love the work you're doing and appreciate your joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
So thank you for everyone's patience. Again, we're about 10 minutes behind. Good problem to have. We have great turnout tonight and have had a good discussion, but appreciate patience of attendees and our panelists here. Our next agenda item is a discussion on the Champlain Parkway. We have two groups here with us this evening. One is a citizen group, Pine Street Coalition. We have representatives Tony Reddington and Steve Goodkind to provide their perspective on the Parkway. And then we also have here this evening representatives from the Department of Public Works and Chapin Spencer, Norm Baldwin, Susan Malzone, and I think maybe I saw another DPW representative here. But certainly we have those folks. And speaking to our panelists previously, we're going to start with Tony and Steve from the Pine Street Coalition, give them an opportunity to present. Then we'll turn to the Department of Public Works to provide an update on their plans, and would love to leave some time for questions. So Tony and Steve, can I turn it to you all first?
Yeah. Tony, got some slides. You want to show those, or you want to just leave those as for later?
Thank you, Ben. Could we first see if we can share screen that we tried last time? Hopefully my computer will allow that. If Liam is handling things.
Sure. Tony, give me 1 second.
Yeah.
All right, I've made you a co-host, and within a few seconds, you should be able to share your screen. I do have those slides if you'd like me to share them.
Can you see the Champlain Right Way slide?
Cannot.
You cannot. Let me try. Oh, wait a minute. Let me check it one more time. Yes, now I think we have it. How about now?
Nothing yet.
I can go without the slides. I don't know if you can work on it while I'm talking for 4 minutes.
I also have it. So Tony and Steve, if you want to go ahead, I have it. So I'd be happy to share my screen if you want to go ahead.
Right now, it says the host disabled participant screen sharing. That's the message from Zoom that you did not enable me.
You should be made a co-host.
Well, I have it available to go right now, so I'll be happy.
Okay.
I say try it. I don't.
There you go. It's up.
I don't really need the slide, but you can leave that slide up while I'm speaking. That's fine with me.
Go ahead then, Steve.
Okay. Tony and I are here tonight to talk about what we see as the probable and hopeful future of the Southern Connector Champlain Parkway project. It's been around for a long time. It seems like it's always going nowhere, but actually, last few years, some things have really begun to change with that project. Just to introduce myself briefly, Steve Goodkind, I was a city engineer and the DPW director for a period of about 32 years with Burlington. I'm now happily retired. For about 15 of those years, I was actually the manager of this project. The Southern Connector project, or I'll call it the Champlain Parkway, I guess, was really part of a countywide, what we call a ring road project. If you've ever traveled on the interstate and look at highway maps, you see that many cities have an interstate that goes through them, and then a series of ring roads. And it's the interstate, for instance, is Interstate 90. The ring roads will be like 190 and 290 and 390 for names. But they go in sort of in concentric circles out from the center. They don't go through the center. That's what the interstate usually does. In Chittenden County, this ring road system, which goes back to the 60s or 70s, consisted of roads like the Northern Connector, the Beltline, or the bypass in Essex, 189 off the interstate, and then projects that have not been completed are the Southern Connector and the Circumferential Highway. But they were all designed to be a ring around the county, and they were all designed to interconnect. Of course, some of them may never happen, and that may be something we don't see in the future, but that was the concept. And the idea was not to bring traffic on some kind of an interstate like highway into downtown Burlington, but it was actually designed to provide another way to travel north and south to and through Burlington to the west of downtown, and to relieve traffic from the main north and south routes, which were Pine Street and to some degree Shelburne Road. That's what the plan was. It was not a plan to build a new route into downtown. It was designed to remove traffic, and more importantly, designed to take traffic out of the neighborhoods that we know of as the South End by Flynn and Home, and in the South End at the other end of Pine Street, King and Maple. It was specifically designed to take traffic out of those neighborhoods. That was the plan. And for about 30 or 40 years, that's what the city pursued. Whenever it came up in environmental impact statements that we had to prepare, and the federal government said, do you want to look at a route that just goes up Pine Street? We said, no, it was dropped. And that's the way things stood until the mid 2000s. During that time, we were doing an environmental impact statement on the project. And the feds asked again, do you want to consider a route that goes all the way up Pine Street and goes through the King and Maple Street neighborhood? And we said, no, we don't. And they said, well, tell you what, not only are you going to consider that, but we want that to be the so-called preferred route. That was something which had never been considered by the city of Burlington and never supported before. And in fact, at the time was clearly not supported. We went through a 3-year battle with the federal government to try to convince them that that was not the route we wanted and never even conceived of. And that was, we believe, counter to the purpose and need of the project. Well, the feds were unrelenting. We used many arguments, but one of our chief arguments was something which is sort of in the news today a little bit, but not much known back then, something called environmental justice. And environmental justice says that you don't do major government-funded infrastructure projects and just put them through low-income and minority neighborhoods just because they seem to be less powerful and you can do it. And those kind of rules been in effect for a while, but back in mid-2000s, the rules weren't so strong. They were sort of advisory, and the feds informed us that other things were of greater concern in the environmental document that trumped any consideration of environmental justice, things like some historic preservation in the rail yard. That was more important. So in the end, the feds finally said, after about a 3-year battle, they said to us, if you continue to object to the route going up Pine Street, we will stop funding the project. And at that point, Mayor Kiss said, well, let's get what we can get out of this. And he basically folded. He said, we'll take what we can get. We'll accept a project that goes up Pine Street. We don't like it, but if we have no other choice, if that's the best we can get, we'll take that. Okay, fast forward from, say, 2009 and 10 to 2015. A few things had changed. One of the big ones is Barack Obama became president, and the environmental justice rules became much more important and, well, I guess important is the word I want to say. No longer did other parts of the environmental impact statement override or trump them. Environmental justice became a key criteria that had to be met. The rules were tightened and the criteria was strengthened. At the same time, a group of us, Tony and I are members of it, began to look and see how we could challenge the connector and see if we could not enforce environmental justice rules on the design and see if we couldn't get back to a better design, one that was more in line with what the community had sought all along. And we eventually got an attorney. They filed a lawsuit, and one of the chief challenges was that environmental justice concerns had not been met. And I'll say candidly, much to our surprise, we didn't have to take them to court to get that. The Justice Department looked at our claims, and they acknowledged that the environmental justice criteria had not been met, and that a review would have to be conducted, and the project would be basically have to come under the criteria that exist today, not the criteria that existed, say, in 2006 or 2009 when the feds were saying the criteria wasn't so important. So that process has started. I think there's some real problems with it. I think in the end, if something doesn't change, we're likely to end up in court again fighting over environmental justice. But clearly, I think at this point, the connector does have an opportunity to be redesigned, to be a project that we all want, and be more like the project that was always envisioned for this. It was never envisioned to be going through low and minority income neighborhoods. That was not part of the plan, and it shouldn't be. And just in closing, I'll say two things. As proposed, there is no way that this plan is going to meet environmental justice concerns. And there are, and Tony will talk about this, there are other ways that this project can go forward that will meet those requirements. It means taking a little pause, going back and doing some things differently, but you can have, and we can have a good project. But if we keep going this way, we'll probably have no project. So Tony, I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, Steve. I'm not sure if I've been, my screen says I'm sharing. I'm not sure that's happening.
There's slides up there. I don't know if you can see them.
Tony. Yeah.
Okay, good. First, I just want to comment that the last time that Pine Street, which I think was Charles Simpson and myself, spoke here at Ward 5, it was your first ever Zoom meeting about a year ago. And I just want to comment, there's really two major things that have happened since that time. First, as Steve has outlined, we've had the environmental justice process underway, and there was a hearing in July, early August last summer, and unanimously all the individuals who attended basically condemned the placement of the Parkway through cutting the King Maple neighborhood in two. And I think if you can see the picture now of the kids getting on the bus, this picture was very important because it showed the school bus in the morning at the corner of Pine and Maple Streets, that in fact, and this was a surprise to everybody, the percentage and the proportion of those people with brown and black skins that live in the King Maple neighborhood. It brought to life the issue of environmental justice and of racism in transportation, something that, quite frankly, I had never thought about until this environmental justice process began. The second piece is that, as you can tell by the title here of the map, it's the right way. That's the design of the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance. This group, which has been working very closely with the city in regard to the racism as a public health emergency policy that the city council adopted, and ourselves are working jointly along with Innovation Center, who you all know are the owners of, are owned by 40th Burlington on Lakeside. So we're now sort of a three-ring circus in terms of our approach, and working jointly to get a design for the Parkway that we can all live with and we can all love. So in terms of how the Parkway affects everybody, consider this, that when you add traffic, up to 37% more traffic along Pine Street in the King Maple neighborhood, the quality of life declines. You're adding 6 new traffic signals, which means more pedestrian injuries and delay for everybody. And of course, when you divide a community with a roadway, you actually divide the neighbors and the residents from each other. So what we're watching here in regard to the city and the state has been an effort by the government to completely disregard the environmental justice concern and knowingly add risk to a minority and low-income community. If we've learned anything in 2020 and now 2021, it is that this divide cannot continue. I think we heard earlier in the presentation today, the issue of public safety that Zaria Hightower and Skylar Nash brought to us. This same issue permeates not just public safety, it also permeates, we're now learning, transportation and the work that must be considered and now understood, digested, and practiced. A redesign of practice at the Department of Public Works. So let's take a look at a couple of slides here. This picture is what it could look like between Flynn and Home Avenue. The idea that we've been working obviously with the Walk and Bike Council, who originally complained about the lack of any separate sidewalk. There's no sidewalk along the route of this project, not an inch. There's no separate bikeway. There's no protected bike lanes. This is an example where you can see the roadway on the left, a 2-lane roadway, then a 10-foot wide 2-way bikeway, and a separate sidewalk. That's what we deserve in the South End. If we're going to spend on a project that's now really over $100 million, the least we should expect is a sidewalk and a bikeway. I mean, it defies imagination, one's thinking that you can't get something like this high quality, world-class facility when you're spending this kind of money. And I guess what we're talking about here then is a Champlain Right Way, and we call it the Right Way, is a multimodal transportation improvement alternative to the obsolete, environmentally harmful, and racially unjust Southern Connector Champlain Parkway design as it currently exists. Finally, this last picture actually shows a separate bike lane and a separate walkway design for an intersection that might be done at Flynn and the Parkway, or and we dare say it at the Parkway as a new entrance to the parking lot at the Burlington Co-op City Market Co-op South End. So we'll just end by saying that we think that the introduction recently of bringing the connector, the Rail Enterprise project, which would go from roughly Kilburn Street and Curtis Lombard over to the Battery Street. That project, the Rail Enterprise project or Battery Street extension, however you want to term it, that is now back on the table and can be part of how we go forward. Only because of the citizen effort, the grassroots efforts. Neither Steve or I are getting a cent tonight. The bureaucrats that you're going to hear now, they're getting paid. But the point is that because we have questioned this project, we've gotten the state and the feds to reverse their position and to say, okay, we'll build this bypass essentially of King Maple. And now we just have to put the final pieces together so that there is no parkway cutting the King Maple neighborhood in two.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate your and Steve's presentation. And I'm sure, well, you mentioned Chapin Spencer and the bureaucrats in the room, right? Yeah. So Chapin, I suppose we will turn it to